The Seattle Storm get a top 3 draft pick, but honestly, does that even matter until we know what the CBA is going to look like? We'll talk about that and more on today's episode of Tempestagi Talk.
You have 3 people who are selfless like that, 3 people who are dangerously disciplined like that, and you have a coach that also embodies all of those characteristics. You can expect good basketball.
I love interacting with the fans. I'm excited for them to cheer for us because it's hell when you come here. I even welcome people that could be skeptical because it's new.
There's going to be a standard of excellence and discipline in everything that we do.
The Pacific Northwest, this area, how passionate they are. It's culture everywhere, but it's great culture here. That's what I want to be a part of, to compete for a championship. That's everybody's goal. And I think it's just how we go about things and habits that we create. I want to be around winners that'll help us get closer to that.
And that's what the fans can expect. And we're going to have some fun.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Tempestagi Talk, which is a part of Black Rosie Media. We are keeping a local eye on the Seattle Storm. And, this is an off-season installment of Tempestagi Talk. So you'll see your traditional hosts, myself and Joveta F. Rodriguez here. But of course, we are joined by Brian Florentin, who is my co-host on Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. And as we've talked about before, we're basically interchanging. Sometimes we'll be on Tempestagi Talk, sometimes we'll be on Gotta Get Up, but we will always be here to talk about the big news in women's basketball. Yeah. So again, I am joined by Brian Florentin, who is our special guest here, writes with the Neds Daily, the local W, and of course over at Gotta Get Up. Brian, how you doing?
I'm feeling good. It's end of the month. It's getting a little bit colder, but good times. A lot of stuff to cover, so we got ourselves a good time tonight.
100% in the city of champions over there, Gotham FC getting it done again. And as I've said on We Need to Talk, our CBS sports podcast, women's sports podcast, the last time Gotham FC won a championship, the New York Liberty won the very next year. It's a high bar, and we'll get into why, because we definitely are going to talk about the coaching carousel. But first, let's check in with Joveta F. Rodriguez, my co-host of Tempestagi Talk. How you feeling?
I am doing all right. It was a fun weekend getting to cover the draft lottery at Rough and Tumble. Shout out Jen Barnes. Got to talk to Lisa Brummel, Storm co-owner. Got to see some folks there who helped things happen for the team, and I'm excited to talk about it today. How are you doing, Erica?
Well, I'm making it. I'm doing all right. I've been in Seattle for a little bit here. We've got, of course, the Seattle Kraken, second place in the Pacific Division at the start of today. Then we also have the Seattle Torrents, played their first ever game against Vancouver last Friday. And this coming Friday, they will host Minnesota at Climate Pledge Arena. So that's part of the reason that I'm here for an extended trip. But super excited for that. Also excited because Black Rosie Media is bringing all of that hockey content that I am known for directly to the platform. We've dabbled on and off over the years, but our next and newest endeavor, I should say, is the 206 Sports Collective. So this episode of Tempestagi Talk will also be a part of 206 Sports Collective. For those who don't know, 206 is, of course, the Seattle area, and we'll have an opportunity to continue to expand our coverage to not just Seattle Storm and the Kraken and the Torrent now, but in the next few months, we hope to be able to introduce you to a few new faces to our platform that have been doing great work covering things.
That's cool.
In Seattle.
Fun fact. We get like some raffles at work that we can get tickets for CPA games. I am going to the Kraken game on December 6th with tickets from work, but I did not win the raffle for the Torrent home opener and the Minnesota game, and I am so bummed. I think I'm just gonna cancel.
Oh no. Well, excited. I will still be in town, so I'm gonna have to come find you and say
Ooh.
hi for that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's super cool.
it's going to be my first
That
Kraken game.
That's awesome. So we've got Craig here. Uh-oh. I think I cut out for a little bit. Sorry about that, everyone. Technical difficulties. Bear with us as we're live streaming here. But I think that's awesome. Welcome to the hockey family. If you have any questions, well, you can watch Black Rosie Media because we've got you covered. But we've got Tammy in the chat. We've got Ronnie here and Craig as well. If y'all have any questions, let us know. We will go through them as we continue on here. Well, we've got a pretty packed show. We're going to talk about the WNBA draft lottery. The draft hasn't happened yet. Then what is this? Yeah, what is this new trend we're seeing when it comes to WNBA head coaching positions, or I should say NBA being a feeder to WNBA head coaching positions? And is it a good thing? Is it a show of progress, or is it limiting again, specifically Black women's roles? We'll talk about that. Will we get a new CBA deal? Are we going to hit are we going to get an extended deadline, or will there be a work stoppage? And then what we love in women's basketball news. Again, a reminder to follow and subscribe Black Rosie Media. We have so much happening here, so many great creators. Recently just had they have those Kraken to talk hockey, and also for Kraken and hockey loving people that speak or at least appreciate Spanglish, which was a really fun conversation. Ava Wood from 365 Hockey Girl, an amazing content creator, joining us to talk about the Seattle Torrent game in Vancouver and then what to expect as they come to Climate Pledge Arena. And just today, I had a conversation with Allison Lucan, who is a part of the Seattle Kraken broadcast team, but will also be a part of the team for the Seattle Torrent. And she talked about what makes her nervous about venturing into women's hockey and how she is able to challenge herself throughout the last 4 seasons working with the Seattle Kraken. So we are going to get into all of that. But Roberta, as you mentioned, you were at Rough and Tumble. I know, Brian, we've got to get you out here to Seattle because we got to get you to one of our Rough and Tumble live shows. We have so much fun. But as you mentioned, Jen Barnes, the owner there of Rough and Tumble, they've got one coming to Columbia City eventually, hopefully soon. But there was a watch party there. Before we get into your boots on the ground observations and your conversation that you mentioned, Roberta, Brian, we're going to start with the reaction to the draft. Now, we know how the odds go and like so many different numbers. Like, I feel like can we parse that down, like 400 some odd different number combination? It just seemed like a lot. I was like, I gotta think that we can parse that down, but it's all for show. But Brian, what were your reactions to how the numbers favored, once again, Dallas with the number 1 pick?
Yeah, I feel like my brain has accepted the 2-year record when it comes to draft lottery positioning. So I was kind of hoping that we got some shakeups when it came to who won the lottery last night. But Dallas winning it, I'm okay with. I feel like that organization, they've dealt with so many bumps in the road in the past couple of years. And now that with a new arena on deck coming soon, practice facility, and a franchise player locked in with Paige Beckers, I think this pick is really going to be intriguing for them. They have so many different exciting avenues to go down. I feel like my brain has been set for them getting a big for the past year. I was like, oh, they're going to grab Lauren Betts, why not? And then the Our Fam sort of hype has picked up, and now my brain, I think we'll get to it a little bit later, but my brain is so locked in on some of the lead guards that are coming out in this draft. I'm like, maybe a supercharged backcourt could be the thing. So it's a lot of exciting combinations to think of. And I think for Dallas fans, being able to at least start to see some light at the end of this particular tunnel, I think is going to be really exciting for them. Like, the org is really seemingly serious about investing and doing things the proper way. And I feel like getting the number one pick again is going to be another solid plank in that foundation. And I think they'll really start to get themselves to where they really want to be in about maybe 2 years' time, depending on how the league looks, of course.
Very interesting, and definitely want to break some of that down. But yes, Dallas gets the number one pick. Minnesota, a team that was not only in the playoffs the last 2 seasons, but 2 years ago, as Brian and I talked about in length 2 years ago, was in the WNBA finals, went to game 5 because we didn't have a 7-game series yet, although of all of the series in the last 2 seasons to go to 7, I really wish it would have been that one. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. Minnesota getting the number 2 pick, Howard, and then Seattle coming in at 3. First of all, how did Cheryl Reeve craft this? Like, can we even talk about like how the rich get richer?
There's this franchise in the WNBA that's called the Chicago Sky, and they've made some moves that did not help them at all. They could have the number 2 pick, and it would be very helpful to them, but they exchanged it for Ariel Atkins. So Jeff Pagliaca, he has a lot to respond to and a lot to something doesn't make sense with that franchise because they just can't get it right. No one stays, no one wants to go there. I mean, Gabby Williams herself was like, girl, no.
I mean, there's a laundry list. Gabby Williams, Sylvia Fowles, Elena Deladon, maybe even Angel Reese. Like, I mean, and I feel like that's not an even exhaustive list. We've heard the stud buds.
Everyone wanted to leave. Yeah, so Chicago missed that opportunity to have that number 2 overall pick. And the pick ended up going to a team that absolutely does not need it.
They do not need it. Well, in fairness.
All of the main players are unrestricted free agents. So Nafisa Collier, Kayla McBride, the stud buds.
The entire roster except for one player.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the Minnesota Lynx is a team that players want to come back to, and players want to play for Cheryl Reeve. So I assume they're not. If Cheryl Reeve wants to keep that core, if she wants, with a healthier team, because the Minnesota Lynx had some roadblocks this season due to injury, she might want to persist with that group to see if they can get to a championship finally. It might be I don't assume that that Minnesota is going to have a hard time bringing back their main pieces. I don't see Nafisa Collier leaving at all. I don't think Kayla McBride wants to leave. Like, that's a team. It's the polar opposite of the Chicago Sky. And I am sorry, Sky fans. It's not anything against the team. It's just record. It's just when you put you have. Yeah, no. Minnesota didn't really need that. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to trade or if they're going to want to select someone that can be developed and kind of like that they can keep in the back pocket, for the future, because players are going to leave, players are going to retire, not everyone's going to stay. Cheryl Reeve is a great coach to develop players. She's really good with that. So I think that whoever they pick is going to be very lucky to be on that team.
Yeah, and I think she's also a solid GM, right?
Yes. I was like, she oh, sorry. She is president of basketball operations. They don't really have a GM.
Oh, well.
From what I've seen, because Claire Duval, the unrivaled poached their GM. Nafisa Collier was like, I'm bringing you with me.
Well, she used to be the GM. So yes, there's been all kinds of
Yes. Yeah.
structural changes. But yes, it's a solid organization. And I think what you said is important, Huerta, because having the number 2 pick gives them so many options as
Yeah.
again, as we're going to talk about, there are so many things that are still up in the air because we don't have a collective bargaining agreement. So we won't know what free agency or how that will impact. Because yes, you have the free agents that have to eventually sign, whether they sign with the team they
Yeah.
want to sign with or not. But if free agents move, Brian, then of course that means that rosters are moving as well. So if so that could be interesting because if you want to have a veteran player, but you're worried about the salary cap, or maybe you need to sweeten the pot, in some way, you have that flexibility now where either you utilize that pick in some kind of trade, you keep the pick, and then on a draft day you can use that, or
Mhm.
as Huerta
Yeah.
said, you either get a prospect that you yourself can develop, or you play a little hardball, Brian, right? And you grab someone someone else wants at 2. I mean, at 2, you really have there's only one team picking ahead of you. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of options here for a team that seems like it could be, regardless of what we see with the next collective bargaining agreement, that it could be a primary destination because of coach, because of legacy, and as Huerta said, because I do think there's a high chance that Minnesota, Brian, is going to be able to bring some people back.
Yeah, I think for the Lynx and everything I've read about them, all the players love the organization. They feel supported. New ownership with Mark and Alex are really investing, putting a lot into the team. And I think just the run of the past 2 years, being a 3-pointer away from a championship at 24, of a badly timed feet injury from going into the playoffs this year, at full strength, ready to just like roll. So I think for this group, it feels like they're right on the doorstep. And if I'm so close to a championship, like if I'm a player like a Dejanay Carrington, for example, if I'm as close to a championship as I've been in quite some time, why would I want to sort of like jump somewhere else if the option of not being on a contender and still getting really good minutes is out there for me? I would want to stay put. Same thing for like a Courtney who has mentioned that Cheryl really sort of unlocked a new part of her game and gave her a higher sense of confidence. Same thing for a player like a Lan Smith, who really had her best career years with Cheryl Fee, obviously, since she's the franchise there. So I think for Minnesota, they're in a position where they can bring just about all their people back, depending on whatever iteration of the salary cap we wind up getting when basketball returns. And then with the number 2 pick, I feel my initially I had sort of like locked myself into them getting a big because I'm gonna assume that they lose one of their bigs in expansion draft, because I really think they might wind up losing like a Jess Shepard or Kurlova. They might wind up losing one of them to Toronto and Portland, maybe both, depending on who can be protected and what the protections are. So my initial thought was, oh hey, they're gonna get a big, they're gonna get a big, they're gonna get a big, but if you get a chance to get a really high powered guard, why not?
Mhm.
Right? Like
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
you can really open up your offense in a different kind of way, because Kayla is really good and she's a tremendous scorer, but she may not be the guard that can really sort of like break you down off the dribble in the ways that some of these college guards coming in can. So I think for Minnesota, it would give them a newer look in addition to the really solid foundation that they have. So I think for Cheryl and friends, they're in such a really fascinating spot. I will say we'll get to Seattle, the Seattle portion next. I don't think teams are going to trade their picks this year, because I feel like because I guess when we get to the CBA piece, a thought that's been coming to mind for me is that this is going to be cheap talent in a sense. So whereas, oh, they are probably going to get a certain number, whereas the vets are going to pop up if everything goes to how the PA wants it. The vets and experienced players are going to crack the like early mid six figures, somewhere around there, whereas the rookies are probably going to be on the lower side. So if you have a really talented youngster on a lower pay, so to speak, it gives you a little bit more flex to grab some, maybe not a tier one kind of star, but like a tier two, someone that you think might be just that big enough push to get you past a Las Vegas and a New York. So I think that they have full control and they can do a lot of different things here.
Yeah, I think you're right that there is value, especially with we're expecting the trend that salaries are going to go up. We don't know what the salary cap will look like because we've seen salaries go up and the cap be very limiting to the point where we've talked about it on Tempestagi Talk, talked about it on Gotta Get Up, that teams have continued to, instead of maxing out at 12, which they can do numerically, to minimize that by a player or two, because then they don't have to pay 12 players off of the cap and maybe they go with 10 or 11 so that they can pay those star or veteran player contracts. So that's going to be really interesting how that works. I do want to talk about Seattle, and I see Ronnie and Tammy having an exchange here that I absolutely want to get into. And if you listen to the show, you probably already know where I'm going to go with this. With the number 3 pick, because just a reminder, the Seattle Storm had the number 2 pick last year. Okay, we'll get into that. But before we do that, we talked about Dallas, we talked about Minnesota, we did talk about Chicago, and of course, we are going to talk about Seattle. But I want to talk about Washington, because what Brian said makes Washington a scary team for me. They have a top 5 pick. They have young talent that's going to be on rookie contracts. To Brian's point, if you want to build a roster of good talent, but on the lower pay scale, the way you do that is to get young talent because they're going to be on a rookie contract, right? And they've already got Sonia Citron, Steele. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Chicago involved in Washington even getting that number for Sonia Citron, who in a world where Paige Beckers is not a media darling, probably could have gotten more than a few more votes for Rookie of the Year. They have Georgia Amore, who hasn't even suited up for them yet, Kiki Iriafen, and a top 5 pick, specifically Huerta, the number 4 pick. That to me, and then Washington might go from a bottom dweller Huerta to, especially for certain types of veterans that are ring chasing, that might be a primary destination as a veteran to get paid.
Yeah, and that's because we didn't even mention Shakira Austin. Like, they also have Shakira Austin. What the Washington Mystics is doing is so smart, and I feel like with the whole super team conversations that we have had, they're going the opposite way of the most recent trends of teams wanting to win now. Washington is being very patient. They're building brick by brick, draft pick by draft pick. It's kind of scary because they already had the names that Erica mentioned, and then recently they traded for JC Sheldon, who is
spicy.
Exactly. They and for the reserves, like they have Jade Melvin. She has proven to be so reliable for them. So what you see with the Washington Mystics, it is a team that did not make the playoffs. It's a team that might not make the playoffs next year, but it's going to be a championship contender in about 2-3 years. That's what I'm saying.
But wait. What happens to Chicago if they do make the playoffs over them?
Chicago. It's interesting because Chicago has a big Brazilian fan bases now, because of Camila.
Because of Camila.
And I'm gonna say, the Brazilian sense of humor is the best sense of humor that you're going to find in the world. The things that I've read that I wouldn't dare translating.
Oh my gosh. I can just imagine.
There is that meme of Andrew Reese holding the Chicago Sky card, with the draft pick last year. Someone made one in Portuguese with that said, "Fecha essa lojinha," which is like close this little store, like close this close this bungalow or something like that.
Oh my god.
So
Yeah,
it's
I mean, and they have every right to absolutely clown the Chicago Sky.
yeah,
Washington
yeah.
will have 3 first.
Yep. Yeah. And then
Washington. I okay. Woof. Washington. But where is Misha Jones? Where is Misha
where is
Jones?
Misha Jones?
We got to
Where
get
is-
me MJ. You got to come back because we got to get your thoughts on this. Washington has 3 first-round picks.
Mhm.
3 first-round
On
picks.
top of who they already have.
On top of who they already have. And if they make the playoffs with all of those names that we've mentioned, with the number 4, the 9, and the 11 pick, if they make the if they make the playoffs, because baby, they almost made the playoffs last season.
They
If
almost made the playoffs.
If they make the playoffs, they will get the 2017 pick from Chicago in a year where, just to name one name, you've got Juju Watkins could be available for that draft. Like what? Like what are we talking about? So Juju Watkins, Sarah Strong will be available, right? Is technically would be available for that draft. Like it's insane. Washington, we really, not to make it all we making it all about the Mystics. Like I'm gonna bring this mic close. We gotta make it all about the Mystics because that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And again, like Chicago, what you doing? You eating too much of that deep dish pizza, air quotes. Like that's wild. That's
Chicago.
wild.
Yeah, Chicago is doing like some crazy stuff that's like, it's so insane that I'm almost becoming like a conspiracy theorist. Like they have to be doing that on purpose. It's because if you're not doing that on purpose, then what are you doing? Like,
is this like our own version of The Producers, like the musical The Producers, where you try to make a flop because it will make you more money? I don't, like this is their version of that springtime for Hitler.
they announced
That's actually way too on point now that I think about the world. That was, anyway, that's a political podcast for another time. But like Washington, we have to watch out for. So we might have to in this offseason really break this down, because I feel like I've been giggling through it because I honestly can't believe how scary Washington can be, and also how scary and dire this situation can be for Chicago.
And isn't Elena Deladon exercising some type of role with the Mystics?
Go ahead, Brian.
I think for Elena, she has some office job. I forget her exact title in the Mystics, but I know she's around. But I know her big job is a 3x3. But
3x3.
I think it might just be like some advice or something like that.
Maybe, which I
that's to have around.
That's Washington. That's all I got to say about that. Okay, let's we'll talk about the other picks, and we'll talk about again some players to watch for the draft. We won't really, I think it's way too early to talk about who's going to go where. I think the big thing that everyone's talking, just to get this out of the way, the big thing that everyone's talking about, because Dallas has the number 1 pick and because we know AZ Fudd will absolutely be out of eligibility, is that everyone's like, well, Paige is in Dallas. Maybe AZ Fudd goes to Dallas. And honestly, that's a cute thing to say right now. I honestly don't think it's a bad decision. I think it just depends on, and Dallas is not in the same position as, again, a Chicago, as a New York, who everyone basically is a free, not everyone, but, or in Minnesota, where everyone but one player is a free agent. So they have some players, including Paige Beckers, who they know they'll have. Do you go with a surefire thing? We know that Fudd and Beckers work well from their UConn days, not to mention they're gay, Marcus. That's a hockey reference, a women's hockey reference. For those who don't know, again, check us out at 206 Sports Collective. They're gay, Marcus. They're gay. But that's going to be interesting. But again, we'll break that down. Lauren Betts, Awafam, is getting a lot of play, and rightfully so. But I don't want to get into that before we, of course, talk about the Seattle Storm. Ronnie, I'm going to come to your comment here. I'm going to read this out loud. Horta, I think the Storm hit a home run with Sonia Rahman. As for my Libbies, well, there's some several, 4 of them, crying emojis. Brian, we'll get into that for sure. I will hold my nose and roll with the punches. We're going to talk about the coaching carousel, and maybe not specifically about Sonia and, the Godfather, as some people are already saying. But we'll get into that, more broad strokes. But this is the part that I want to get to, because it goes into what Tammy and then what Craig has also put in the comments. Ronnie says, congrats on the number 3 pick, and I know the Storm will pick wisely. To which Ronnie, as they have outlined, comes to Black Rosie Media for New York Liberty coverage. But we know Tammy comes to Black Rosie Media for Storm coverage. So to which Tammy says, to Ronnie's comment, I was with you until that last line. Luckily, it will be difficult to miss with the number 3 in this draft. Now that is true. And I'm going to do what Tammy did instead and reverse it. I'm going to flip it and reverse it. I'm absolutely with you on that last part. In theory, I will just add that caveat. In theory, it should be hard to miss in this draft when you have a top 3 pick. And that's what the whole premise, that's what our thumbnail is, everything. But it is predicated on what you do with your roster, what you do with your salary cap when we know, and if you trust your front office. To which Craig knows what I was going to say, because we had the number 2 pick and we're so proud to have her play off of the bench for the majority of the season. And I strongly believe when you have the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, and in the WNBA, at least the number 4 pick, 5, depending on the draft, can be up in the air. But when you have a top 4 pick, you play the top 4 pick. Except the Seattle Storm did not agree with me on that, Horeta. And I feel vindicated on my epic rants throughout the season. And so, as we've been saying in our Slack channel, which if you want to join our Slack channel, the link will be in our in the show notes, and you can we'll also put it down here. Like Dominique Malunga, in hindsight, I mean, I didn't need hindsight, but I heard what the team was saying, and I vehemently disagreed. There is no world in which, like, Paige Beckers was the number 1 pick. I don't even remember who was 3, but I can tell you who wasn't. I can tell you who it wasn't. It wasn't Kiki Iriafen. How many minutes did she average? It wasn't Sonia Citron. How many minutes did she average? You know what I'm saying? Like, why was Dominique Malunga at the number 2 pick so underutilized? And maybe you could say, maybe if she went to Minnesota, maybe if she went to New York. Oh, well, are you really going to play a 19-year-old rookie ahead of Brianna Stewart, ahead of Nafisa Collier, ahead of, Jonquel Jones, ahead of Alana Smith? Of course not, except that's not where she went. And listen,
Yeah.
Nneka Ogwumike is there. Gabby Williams is there. You, of course, have Ezi Magbagor there. But what did I say, Roberta? What did we talk about on Tempestagi Talk? At best, what would have been best in my estimation for this organization was to split the time between Dom and Ezi, because you develop Dom in my easy bake oven way, but you also challenge Ezi, because Ezi has so much promise, so much talent. We saw what she did in that bronze medal game for Australia, but sometimes her teeth just don't come out, or I should say her claws don't retract, right? And that instinct of hers just doesn't always come out. And also, Ezi looked kind of gassed to start the season. So why, if you have the number 2 pick, do you not play the number 2 pick? So as much as I want to believe, and as much as this should be a foolproof draft, we've got Betts, Awa Pham. We've got Flau'jae Johnson is going to be available in this draft. We've got, so many other talents. You should be able to get a banger at 3. You need front court, no problem. You need backcourt, no problem. You need bench support, no problem. You need a shooter, a true number 2, no problem. And yet, why do I find myself, Roberta? I mean, I got into this rant so early today, but why do I find myself just questioning not Sonia Rahman, but what Sonia Rahman will even be capable of doing because of roster construction?
Yeah, and I find very interesting that you mentioned that, because again, I had the opportunity to interview Lisa Brummel after the draft lottery yesterday, and I asked her what were her thoughts. What she repeated the most is that they hadn't really had a chance to properly talk with Sonia Rahman about what she's envisioning for the team. And she emphasized that about how she wants to think about Sonia's vision for the Storm, which a head coach is not the one making the hiring decisions and is not the one. Yes, exactly. So here's my time to go on a rant. This franchise has been very confusing for the longest. They don't know, they haven't known where they want to go ever since Brianna Stewart left, because they were not ready for Brianna Stewart to leave. They have.
Go on. I'm gonna let you talk. I'm just gonna.
They have
these comments.
I saw.
Like what? Okay, Roberta, you have the stage. For once, I'm not gonna kick you off. I'm gonna amplify you. Please.
So
I'm
one
reacting
thing
very strongly to all of this.
Yeah, one thing that I mentioned a lot during Tempestade Talk was that the Seattle Storm looked like a team that had no identity, or that didn't know what their identity was. And then towards the end of the season, actually just a little after the All-Star game, I don't know if it was one of the players, or I think it was Nneka Ogwumike who said that the team was still trying to figure out their identity. And honestly, it seems like the Storm has been in an identity crisis. They have been relying on past laurels, and they think that that's going to take them to a championship. And I take that also because I directly asked Lisa Brummel, is the team now looking to go? You had the number 2 pick last year. You have the number 3 pick this year. You have a new coach. You have Jordan Horston, you have Nick Mio. Are you leaning more towards a rebuild? Are you leaning more towards, building a megazord to win a championship? To which she said, I don't want to say one way or another. I would say that we're building a winning team, which is what we like to do. So, and that goes to what we talk in terms of the Seattle passiveness and lack of, like, showing the grit. Like, you're not going to win in the WNBA if you're not greedy. And I don't see that grittiness from the Seattle Storm. When we talk about the number 2 pick, I feel like we talked a lot about how it's impossible to pass on a generational talent such as Dominic Malonga. And I said time and time again in this podcast, Dominic Malonga is not what the Seattle Storm needed for that draft. Dominic Malonga was not going to be used. The Storm needed a shooting guard. The Storm needed a scorer. They went with a number 3, everything. She can be everything. But what the Storm needed and what the Storm needs, depending on what they're going to do in free agency, because now we don't, without Noel Queen, do we know if NECA and Skylar are coming back? Gabby Williams has not. It hasn't been looking like Gabby Williams is going to return. So what is the Storm going to do? Let's say NECA Gumake, Skylar Diggins, Gabby Williams come back. I'm gonna say if AZ Fudd is not picked first or second, if the Storm doesn't pick her up on third. You know how the Brazilian fans said, close the store for Chicago, close the store for the Sky. Sorry, for
the damn towel.
because how long can you insist on keeping that very like pivotal spot in the WNBA? The number 2 position is so pivotal. You need true scorers. They were gonna go for Olivia Miles. Olivia Miles did not declare for the draft. You're gonna have AZ Fudd. Her stock has been rising in the NCAA because she has been outstanding. I'm not sure she's gonna go first. I think she can go first. She's not. Dallas does not need AZ Fudd. And if someone cuts this, make a cut with this that I just said. I don't mean that AZ Fudd would not help Dallas. I mean that Dallas has a pretty solid backcourt. They need a big. Seattle needs a better backcourt. They need a number 2. They can't keep playing 2 number 1s at the same time and hope that they're going to win. So Craig is saying, I love Malonga, so get out of win now mode. This, again, the Seattle Storm has been in an identity crisis. They don't know what they're doing. And what I say, the Stewie rule and the Stewie curse is killing the Storm. The truth of the matter is that they don't know who they are. And they keep filling gaps and creating alternatives to a long-term plan, thinking that they're going to win. And then we saw that happen in 2024. We saw that happen this year. The team can go well in the first half. Come second half, everyone is tired because you're playing the starters 40 minutes per game, and you don't utilize your bench. You have Dominic Malonga, who played so little, and then you add Lexi Brown to your bench, and Zaya Cook.
I just pulled up.
If you are going for contender status, those are not the players they are going to bring to your team. With all due respect to those players, you need to be a little more aggressive on who you play, how much time you play them, and who you bring. Honestly, if we're talking about winning contender status, I would say that Gabby, Skylar, NECA, and Brittany Sykes could configure as part of a contender team. But a basketball team is not made of only 4 players. There are 40 minutes in a game, and you need more than that. You need all of the positions filled if you want to win, especially in the WNBA. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's pause here for a minute because you mentioned Gabby Williams. Great person to build your team around. Unrestricted free agent. Skylar Diggins. Great person to build your team around. Unrestricted free agent. Nneka Ogwumike, Brittany Sykes, unrestricted free agents. Ezzy Magbagor has said very clearly, yes, she is an unrestricted free agent, but she also said that she's going to explore free agency.
Yeah.
You have Katie Lou Samuelson, didn't even play last season, unrestricted free agent. Erica Wheeler, unrestricted free agent. So, Tiffany Mitchell, unrestricted free agent. So you've got Nika Mule, Jordan Horston, Dominique Malunga, and Lexi Brown, Lexi Brown on a protected veteran.
And who went on a full-on rant during her exit interview that just that, for me, that didn't make much sense. I think that was out of touch, with all due respect.
I think you have to think of it as strategic. I have said multiple times, we'll do this, we'll stay here for a little bit. I have said multiple times, I just don't see Lexi Brown as the right fit for Seattle. Even if you put aside some of the health concerns, which I do think the strategy for Lexi Brown was to quell that she was unhealthy. And so from that, I feel like I can understand why she would want to do that. I think that even, again, putting some of the health stuff to the side, is she the automatic number 2 that is desperately needed for Seattle, which we knew on this podcast. Brian has been here when we talked about it. We've known that they need a shooter. And even if Katie Lou Samuelson had not been injured, we weren't even sure that was the automatic shooting that was the type of shooting that Seattle needs to be the team they say they are / want to be. So there's like a break from what is real that seems to be happening here. Including I was viscerally reacting. And I will put this caveat out here. When you speak to an executive after a draft lottery at Rough and Tumble, shout out to Rough and Tumble, not sponsored, but totally open to it, Jen. You let us know. Let's have a chat. But when you have a conversation and it's kind of like that business speak, sure, I get it. We don't have a CBA. Everyone's a free agent. So there's a part of the gamesmanship there that I can rock with. But to say that you hired a new head coach and you didn't at any point during the process nor the onboarding so in the interview process nor the onboarding process have a conversation with that coach on what their vision for your championship caliber organization, like, what are we doing? I just want us to pause. Like, Roberta and I are going to bring our blood pressure down. Brian, you are coming to this. Obviously, you're a part of our Black Rosie Media crew, but more specifically, our expert on New York Liberty things. When you hear what Roberta is reporting on, and you know what we've talked about with the Seattle Storm, what are your thoughts? Because maybe we're overreacting. Maybe we're too in it. I don't know. So I want to hear from Brian here. When you heard Roberta say that they have not had a conversation with Sonia Rahman, who was with New York Liberty last year, I mean, are we overreacting? I don't know. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, like you mentioned, there's like some gamesmanship to, you don't want to sort of like show your cards, especially before free agency gets underway. But I think the idea that they haven't had a conversation with Sonia about what her vision is and what that's going to be, I think that's completely irresponsible and wild, frankly. I think for Seattle, they they want to contend. They want to really sort of make themselves and keep themselves in that status of upper tier WNBA franchises, and not having a strategy and plan as to how they're going to get there, whether it's through rebuilding, whether it's through sort of like running the roster back. There are so many things that I think that they should be able to explain, and they've had enough time to figure it out. Because if your thinking is, oh hey, we want to win now, we want to do these, we want to do this, we want to do that, then you wouldn't have ran no way out of there. Because in Sonia's press conference to Lisa Ria was like, oh hey, we were kind of close this year, just a few things didn't go our way. And if that's the case, and you don't have a vision for, if you don't have a vision and understanding as to what your new head coach is going to be, why did you fire the old person? It doesn't make sense when you try to put the two and two together. So I think for Storm management, and I think to the commentators' points earlier, I think they've done such a, I'd say, in the middle kind of job when it comes to roster building, that I understand the skepticism that comes with their process when it comes to finding talent in the draft and playing them much and playing them a good amount. Because even in 24, Nika barely played, and it's like, hey, you have a first round pick. She is going to need some reps, and she is someone you're counting on at some point. There isn't any room to get her in. And then now and then also in 24, I think you guys might have talked about it at the time, but then Gabby's back in. They change up the starting lineup. Jordan Horston moves to the bench. Chaos reigns, all these kind of things. And now if you as an organization don't really have a sort of beeline and idea as to what you're doing, because theoretically they could do a 2 timeline approach where it's, oh hey, we've got the kids here, we're gonna let them develop and grow naturally, but also we've got a lot of money. Seattle is a very beautiful place to live. I'd like to go there. I imagine some people who make more money than me would like to go there too. Why not? And hey, we can make this work. But if you don't really have an idea as to how you're going to do that, you're going to be stuck in a no man's land.
Yeah. I pulled the exact quote here on Otter, and I asked for her general thoughts, just like, got the third pick, so can you talk about it? And she said, we have the opportunity to really add an important part depending on how Sonia pulls her strategy together. It looks like we have a variety of options to pick from. So it's wonderful being the lottery for that reason, yada, yada. And then she says, it'll be fun to work with a new coach to determine what the right combination of people are. And we haven't spent time talking about it, but I know she's got a lot in it. That was the first one. And then it comes, she ends with, on the third question or fourth, because I asked, does that make the Storm lean more towards a rebuilding mentality, or bringing players for, like, build, like I said, a Megazord to win? And said, I wouldn't characterize it one way or the other, to be honest, because again, we haven't spent time with Sonia to really understand her vision. I think we have some great parts to build from. I would say we're going to put a winning team on the court. We have a tradition of that, and we love to do that. So I always go there first to see what happens.
Okay, this is another wrinkle, and I know we've talked about it, the three of us in our Slack channel preparing for this podcast. But this is when I wonder, is it a brilliant strategy or just a lack of communication, as Tammy says here, to have a high-level front office person as opposed to your general manager communicating after you get the number 3 pick in the draft? Because to me, I could almost excuse some of that, not all of it, definitely not all of it, but maybe some of it. And you're like, oh, well, unless you're Cheryl Reeve, how much is a president involved when there is a general manager in place in having some of those conversations? So is this a we as in the organization? Is this a we as in she and Sonia? Like, I could almost entertain that. Almost.
Yeah.
But there are other things there, Joeta, that still don't quite add up.
Yeah, and again, that adds to the whole, like, the whole thing was very rocky. They did let Talisa talk to some outlets, so like ESPN. She told ESPN we're really excited, and that's Talisa review. I think top three, especially in this draft, is going to be a great player for us. So happy to have landed there. I think there's definitely a handful of really great players that are going to be able to make impact on the team right away, which isn't always the case. I do think there's good depth and there's good top level talent in this draft. At three, I really think we'll get someone who to help us right away. They've been saying this. They've been saying this forever. So
Yeah.
the whole thing. First, like the media advisor said, Lisa Brummel would be available for the media. So when the draft ended and I went to the PR rep there, I was like, "So is Lisa going to be available?" They're like, "Oh no, we're not going to have it anymore." So it's like it's just frustrating in general how lack of communication has been impacting. And Erica, you've had this issue when you were here in Seattle too. Like they're just things, and I hate saying this. I do hate saying this because, I mean, I'm not saying this out of experience. I'm saying this as out of experience as a journalist, not out of experience as someone who worked there. I'm talking about Roberta, journalist trying to do her job, get quotes. Um, it's all very frustrating, and it seems like they keep everything locked on, like everything locked from us. It's never clear. It's never really open, and there's so much. We want to talk to players, and
Yeah.
then there's this and
Yeah.
that.
It's
So
not great. It's not great. And it's like we've talked about this before, right? Especially Brian and I get to work together in the New York market. You could be the most terriblest team in sports history, and if you're in New
mhm.
York, you have to talk to media. Like, I mean, I'm a Mets fan, so I freaking know.
Ain't no running.
Ain't no running, right? You know what I'm saying? So I will say, my whole life, I've been used to sports media in New York. Now, Seattle likes to tout that their sports media is in the realm of the upper echelon. And I think that they enjoy some of that to an extent, depending perhaps on the sport. But when it comes down to certain things, I have definitely seen on the WNBA side, to an extent on the hockey side, the men's hockey. We'll see about the women's hockey. Don't forget 206 Sports Collective right here on Black Rosie Media. We got you covered for the Seattle Torrent. But and we've talked about this before, right? The Seattle is this interesting area where it can at times play with the big boys, right? The New York media markets. And then sometimes it's like, oh, but we're not New York. No, we're Seattle. We're gonna do our thing. And
Yeah.
and that selectiveness is endlessly frustrating. And when it comes to though this Seattle Storm team, like this to me, I do agree with what Craig is saying here, especially because there's not a CBA deal in place, which means that we don't know what the salary cap, we don't know what the max salaries are going to be. This also could be a little bit of gamesmanship. But what I like personally, and I'm going to go to Kurt Miller on this. I got to speak to Kurt Miller, I think in August. This man, um, Kurt Miller is a fascinating person to talk to. But what he was telling me in August was that some of the moves and effectively the offloadings in the case of Dejanay Carrington, one of their better players, right? The offloading was forward thinking. They knew they weren't going to be a competitive team.
Yeah, you don't have to say the word rebuild. Like you don't have
No,
to be, oh, we are
but you
rebuilding.
have to do the actions, right? And when you have opportunity, they don't have, like, this is the thing, whether it's a player, executive, there's no obligation for them to explain their whole thinking to us as media, right? There's not. And when you don't do that, and then you also don't produce produce, then you leave yourself vulnerable to the rants that we're having right now. Because the things that you say, yes, they can be cloak and dagger, they can be masked, they can be broad, they can be even misleading at times. Like, there are things, that's why you always try to source, right? Because sometimes people say things because it's the gamesmanship of what they're doing. And so, yeah, maybe if they are rebuilding, they don't want to say that because maybe that's not a conversation that they've had with the veterans, or it's really not a conversation that they can have with the veterans because they don't know what the pay scale is going to be. I can be totally down for that. What's lacking here, and the frustrating part for me here, is that there seems to be a disconnect or an insistency on kind of regurgitating the same lines, even though we have proof. This is my fake proof here. We have proof that what you're saying has not come to pass. So if you're saying it again in another year where you have a top 3 pick, how can we even remotely begin to believe what you're saying if what you're saying is the same thing that you said when you had the number 2 pick and didn't play her? That's the frustrating part here.
Yeah, it is very, yeah.
It's like,
it is very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, Erika, but I literally had to take my sweater off.
I did. We had a wardrobe change in the middle. I had to pour some more wine into my glass because I was like, I can't even believe what we're hearing.
Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead. I'll give you the last word and then we'll move on because I do want to talk about, we've been alluding to the CBA, so we might as well talk about the CBA.
I think, yeah, we're talking about, there's a strategy, blah, blah, but the Storm has been giving that we're going to win now and we are contenders speech since forever. Again, you look at the roster, you look at the moves, that's not, because and I'll go back to the Chicago Sky. If that's what you're doing to achieve that goal, then you gotta recheck, your systems and processes.
So you wreck yourself.
Yeah,
Chicago is wrecked. Seattle doesn't have to be, but they're getting close.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, like, how many more frustrating second halves of seasons do you need to have until you put your hand on your conscience and say, okay, there has to be some sort of aggressiveness in what we do. We can't just be regurgitating the same speech from the previous years just because we are Seattle and we are the nice guys and we are this and that. Like,
yeah,
is New York the good guy? Are the Las Vegas Aces the good guys? Is Sharon Reeve the good guy? No, they're all the villains.
They're winners, though.
Winning. Exactly. So if you're gonna be the good guy,
now you're putting us. Not wait. Brian, you heard how she put us in the category with the villain crew. Like, wait a minute.
Who knew?
Who knew? New York is the villain now? New York? Like,
it's like, because people are saying that New York was too greedy. New York was like, they're taking away from. So I'm like, yeah. So Tammy said, Tammy's because I apologize. So that's the first time that I have a big rent in my new apartment. So I want to apologize to my neighbors if it's being true.
Are you subscribed? I hope that this new neighbor subscribed. You can just hit the notification bell, and then you'll know exactly what he's supporting.
Yeah, because I was living in a house for years. I didn't have that issue, but now, Black Rosy Media, guys, just go there. So yeah, I think that
when we're recording.
So I think that it's. You gotta be aggressive. You have to be controversial. We're not saying that you have to be criminal. You have to be.
Tammy, stop. Wait. Wait, when now yet your mid-season acquisitions were Zaya Mack and Slim. Wow. Bow, bow, bow,
Meanwhile, Minnesota, who did Minnesota get? Dejounte Carrington.
Nick Carrington. Who did New York get? Miss Saman. Meanwhile, I was screaming into the void. Damien, I did see Damien come in here. We did not talk, Damien, specifically about the New York Liberty coach, but yes, I did see that they hired a New York Liberty coach. Thank you for the alert. But I was like, Misaman ain't coming. She ain't coming. And then she not only did she come to the WNBA, but she came to New York.
Yeah,
So,
I think that the Storm is gonna have to take a hard look in the mirror
they have
and
to. Like, something has to give, because this is a team that they're at the bottom of the top tier, but they're fighting and clawing to stay there because of what Roberta has said. Just like I keep saying, if you have the number 2 pick, or in this case, the number 3 pick, if you have the number 2 or 3 pick, you play the number 2 or number 3 pick. But Roberta has been saying the lack of an identity has been hurting this team. That, yes, at the end of the day, when we get to regular season games, that has to come from the coach.
Mhm.
And although I like Noelle Quinn, I think there were limitations, including from the front office, but there were limitations to what she was going to be able to do with this organization. But if that was the issue, if we're identifying that, I can't imagine that the organization hasn't. And for you to say publicly, because here's the thing, Roberta, you ask the question, and what can they do? They can divert and just not answer it at all and say whatever they want to say. They can say no comment. There's so many ways that you can, but instead you hunker down on what you've said before, which is exactly the problem. Like, that's exactly the problem. That there's no communication. So you effectively are fueling now what we've been talking about. And that's not okay. Craig, now this is important, and we do want to have a coaching conversation. I don't know how much we're going to be able to get into it tonight because we're already over 60 minutes. But don't you think the coaching change is a clean slate? Is it going to be semifinals or bust with Sonia? I don't think the coaching change is a clean slate because, as we've said before, the coaching wasn't the only issue. And until you figure out the communication between the coaching staff and the front office, then no, it's not a clean slate. And the reporting that Roberta has just given us is not giving me a lot of faith that the organization is even taking the strides necessary to correct some of the things that have been the bugaboo for them and that keep them from being a borderline contender to a true contender. Because on paper, they should be a true contender. What we saw last season was more indicative in the playoffs, was more indicative of what I had been expecting from this team in the regular season for the past several seasons. And it felt like a last-ditch effort. It felt like a team that was, that was kind of willing themselves, but they never had a true shooting guard. As Tammy broke down, brutally. You make these off-season acquisitions, but when the contenders, the true contenders, right, Brian, are bringing in Emma Mieseman and Dejounte Carrington, I don't know. I don't know where Seattle's moves fit into that landscape, Brian.
Yeah, and even beyond just those two, we saw Phoenix make a swing for Dewana Bonner. Like, we've seen teams that we thought were in the Seattle tier, like a Phoenix, for example. Phoenix lapped them, and now we look at them and it's like, oh, hey, they have a really solid foundation, and they might be able to get back there with a few breaks, with a few positive breaks in some directions. So I think for Seattle, the league landscape has evolved so much in the past 3 years since Breanna Stewart left. And I wonder we like in the New York context, they talked a lot about sort of like having the next evolution and staying ahead of the game. I wonder for
Yep.
Seattle, as even just beyond Sonia, because like I know Sonia fits in the sort of quote unquote modern basketball approach when it comes to her thinking from being around her in New York. I wonder organizationally how they're prepared to keep up with the teams that are in the contender rank, like the big three contenders: New York, Vegas, Minnesota. And then now you have the other teams who are bubbling under the surface, like a Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Indiana's going to be back
Phoenix. Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah,
Atlanta
I've
has
been yeah.
Atlanta set
I
their
mean,
record for win percentage this season. They got knocked out in round
shit.
one, but they exceeded expectations. You have Golden State had a shocking year, and with proof of
Woo.
concept, maybe Fridge. So like, you know what? I like Valhalla. I want to be a part of that as a player, not just an opponent. So
Yep.
there's so much happening under the surface, and I think for the organization, I feel like they have to sort of figure out what the approach is, because now, like this sort of like winter period is so fascinating, because if you've been down for so long, you essentially have a big old red reset button. And teams that, even in Washington, like we talked about them earlier, they're speeding things up and they're building well. They have young talent, and maybe a vet goes to DC and takes them somewhere. So even the teams we think are dirt bad, hey, you never know. Maybe
But
there's
that's
one
the
team
thing.
that's yeah,
Washington is not dirt bad. They're
yeah,
just young.
and
Yeah.
now you've
And
got
they're transitioning, and they've owned it.
mhm.
Seattle is not owning the transition that has happened. And I see there's some comments towards Horveta about Stewie. But I'm not exactly sure, Ronnie, if I'm being honest. I understand this question, but Brian, maybe you understand it better than me. Do you think JK would have given up the farm for Stewie? I
The farm?
think this is, yeah. So the way I would interpret this, especially being a hockey reporter and a baseball fan, when I think of the farm, I think of young prospects, right? The New York Liberty did some great work getting Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones to Brooklyn. I don't know that they necessarily had to quote unquote give up the farm, but also remember that they were a team that was not performing well, to the point where they ended up getting a number one pick that they then used to acquire Sabrina Ionescu. And that is when the true transition, and as Brian knows, and as Jonathan Kolb knows, I kind of clowned him for using that
Favorite word.
hybrid rebuild,
It
hybrid
is.
rebuild, hybrid rebuild. And again, I knew it was gamesmanship, which is why I called him out on it. And it's why that now it's an inside, it's not really an inside joke. It's a very public joke between he and I, because he kept saying hybrid rebuilds when it was clearly much deeper than just a hybrid rebuild. So that goes back to the gamesmanship that happens, right? But it took all of that gamesmanship and it took that belief to then get to a point where they get a number one pick, but then they can also acquire Sandy Brondello and then attract a Brianna Stewart, but also technically acquire a Jonquel Jones. Oh, I see. So Ronnie's saying, should Stewie have been cored? Well,
I was thinking that.
Okay, go ahead, Brian. Then I'm gonna let you go off on that.
Yeah, so I think that if Stewie had been cored and Seattle was like, give us stuff or you don't get her, I think he would have driven himself to Seattle to do it himself if it came down to it. Because I think when you think back to the 2022 New York Liberty, they had the players that went out on the JJ side: Tosh Howard, Beck Allen, the number 7 pick in the 23 draft, and I think just like some other stuff in between. So I think if it came down to it, he would have gladly given it up, and he would have given up a player like a Michaela Onyenwere, who got traded, who was a throw-in in the Phoenix trade, which eventually got them the pick that went for Tosh Cloud and Leonie Fevich coming in as well too. So I think if it had came down to it, he certainly would have, and I don't think anyone would have blamed him. And I think especially for New York at that point, they had just come off a not surprising playoff appearance, but one where they had to really sort of fight to get there because they were out of the playoff race in the last 2 weeks of the season. So it took a lot of heavy lifting down the stretch to get into the postseason, and they got in as a 7 seed. So I think for Cole, he would have looked at the roster and been like, if I can take something here that's a barely there playoff team, ship it out for, at that point, the best player in basketball, you do it 10 times out of 10. And I don't think he would have thought twice about it. Because I think one thing that's a little bit I'd say underreported might be a strong word with Cole, but he'll give up a draft pick if he needs to. Because this year, the Libs pick is in Connecticut because that got in Tosh Cloud. They sent out the 7th pick to get JJ in 23. Like Mick was rookie of the year in 21, 23. She's in Phoenix, and Leonie Fibich comes back in. And that pick that went to Phoenix to Connecticut for Tosh Cloud, but you know what I mean. So he's someone that will trade a pick, and I think that for him, I think this is where investment comes into play because you can sort of punt a pick, and it's like, oh shoot, we don't have a way to refill the cupboards here. You make up for that by doing really good boss work scouting and bringing in international talent. And when the Mabry trade happened in 2023, barely any of us in the United States knew who Leonie Fibich was. And then by July of 2024 is, oh my God, I can't live without you in New York.
Absolutely not. So, absolutely not. I refuse. I refuse.
Yeah.
Like, so I almost wish I've never wanted to be German more than after
said no one ever.
And the Sabali sisters, like, I'm like, are we sure I'm not German? Like, I ain't got none of that. Like, I have a cousin in France. That's like right there. No, I think that what you mentioned here is exactly what we have not seen in Seattle for a really long time. And honestly, to be fair, because I've talked about this before, the New York Liberty pre-Jonathan Kolb did not play this game, or at least not effectively, because the New York Liberty traded away Alyssa Thomas. On draft day. What? Like, history does not agree with that, as far as I'm concerned. History does not agree with that at all. AT, oh gosh, AT with them Bad Boy Bill teams. Come on, man. We need a little extra. We needed an engine to get us over the hump because Bad Boy Bill had them in place, just couldn't get over. Anyway, see, I can go on and on. We're gonna have to do that on Gotta Get Up. But as Ronnie said, now Roberta, it is your turn. So this is what I love. Being a New Yorker by birth and a baseball fan by choice, I know about curses, especially those that involve New York. And the Bambino curse was a big thing for a while. This is going way back. But is there a Stewie curse? Is there a hex? I mean, I might have low-key put a hex on Chicago because of how they treated Teaspoon. I don't know if I personally put the hex on. I just pointed it out. I said someone was going to do the Sealy on Chicago for how they treated Teaspoon. Like, someone was doing that. But is there a Stewie curse? Do you think what has to be rectified in order to lift the Stewie curse?
You're asking a Brazilian something that's related to baseball. I didn't even know there was a Bambino curse. So
okay, yeah, that's a deep cut. Don't worry about it. And Ronnie, you're right. Paying for the engine train.
Yeah, I think that Stewie is so smart and so clever. She knew exactly what she was doing towards her exit of the Seattle Storm. And we have seen a trend of like Storm players leaving and not really ending up in good terms with the team. Stewie knew what she was doing, and when she wanted to go to New York, she had been wanting to go to New York. She stayed in Seattle because of Sue Bird. She wanted to play Sue Bird's last season with her. So, you know, I don't know if that kind of throws a bucket of water on the whole thing, but I don't think it's a Stewie's curse. I think it's how do I put that nicely? I think Stewie outplayed the Storm so successfully that the Storm is still trying to recover from it. That's my take.
I mean, listen, she had a good vet. That good vet being, of course, Sue Bird. Sue Bird, that I myself had to ask, okay, but how close were you to coming to New York? Because she said it before.
So close.
She was very
so
close.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you have a vet / big sister / like matronly figure, you know, just like our own parents, you live vicariously through your children. And what Sue Bird couldn't do, Stewie got done.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Sue Bird say anything negative. Like, I remember when the whole thing was going, they're like, "Oh, is Stewie going to stay in the Storm? Is she going to New York?" And someone asked Sue about it, and she said, "It makes something internal. It makes sense. You know, it's a big market. It's an easier flight to Spain, so." Sue Bird has never publicly spoken about supporting her decision, but like there has never been any sort of like negative.
Yeah, she hasn't denounced it either.
No. Yeah. So it's like I think that Stewie did to the Storm what she and Nafisa are doing to the WNBA with Unrivaled. So, which is, here's what I want, here's what I deserve. I'm gonna get it, and if you can deal with that, that's your problem. And I approve of that message.
And that's our show. No.
I approve of that message. I think that we were going to talk about this today. I don't know. I don't know if we.
Hold on. I'm gonna solo you. Say it again.
Wait, what part?
I'm going to feed you the line. Here we go. I approve of that message.
I approve of that message.
That's wild. Like, I'm not like, I love that you pointed that out. I don't think you're wrong. Stewie has been playing the long game. And Brian, you and I know this because Stewie has been open in saying that she feels good in New York, but she also is signing 1-year deals.
She's very much, I'm going to burn these core designations off me so that way I get it out of my hair and I can really go about my business as I see fit. So she also, I think, is where being in partnership with Cole matters a lot because her thing is, oh, you take care of everything, and then when it's over, call me, and then we'll just wrap everything up one time.
Yes,
and 100%. We saw, and I think it was in 24 when she signed the unprotected deal because it guaranteed a little bit more money and it saved the roster spot, which I think was, I believe Kennedy Burke was a protected veteran that came in. So that way they didn't have to worry about losing a spot and making the most out of the roster. So I think that's where the teamwork and the communication between player and management comes in. And I feel like that part matters a lot. I feel like you guys know more than me about this. So I do wonder what it's like for Talisa and Storm management as it relates to the stars who were there. Because I think especially, I imagine it's a little bit different when it's like newer, like players who are established but newer, relatively speaking, into a market. So you can be like, oh, hey, Nneka, we're gonna do this, but it's not like what's your how do you think we should do it? It's more like I'm about to do this, and then she's like, okay, great. So I wonder what the relationship is like when it comes to roster construction and input from their stars. Because I think especially now that they're unrestricted free agents and the 2 years didn't go the way that they wanted it to, and I wonder if what input, if any, are they seeking from the stars, and
That's a
even
good question.
and I guess related to that, and sort of tied back to the rebuild versus win now mode. Do you even want to keep those stars there? Like they're excellent players, of course, but I wonder after 2 years and a whole lot of trouble, some of it is presumably went out the door to Las Vegas, but who knows what else is there internally with Noe and the rest. It's oh hey, these 2 years were kind of a drag and kind of depressing. Do I want to run it back for year 3, or do I want to just cut the cord completely and then just sort of figure out what to do? So it's a lot of, I wonder, of what does Talisa, Pokey Chapman, and the rest of the Storm sort of like brain trust think of how the past 2 years went, how much they attribute that to Noelle Quinn essentially coaching for her job back-to-back seasons, and that sort of like possibly influencing rotation and things like that, versus now it's okay, we've identified what we consider to be the problem being head coach gone, new person coming in, new ideas, fresh mindset, fresh coach stuff, blah blah blah, all fresh coat of paint. We want to do this thing one last time, or are they completely like, you know what, the coach had to go, you players, we appreciate your couple years here, but we want to go a different direction. So I do wonder how they really interpreted the past couple years.
And I would like to say, I think I'm pretty sharp. I think we're all pretty sharp here, right? And I hope I'm not offending either one of you by saying I don't think any of us know the WNBA business better than active WNBA players.
Yeah.
And that will be the tell. How are the free agents reacting to the coaching change? But at least as of this recording, this live stream that we have here on Black Rosie Media, make sure you subscribe. There's no front office change. How are the players reacting to that? That might be the tell. Because if all of us are at minimum raising questions to where, okay, you wanted to make a change from Noelle Quinn. I think there's some validity in that. I think there's some harshness also in that. We've talked about that, Hoet, you and I on the podcast before. But what we've always maintained is that you cannot place all of that on Noelle Quinn.
No, not at all.
And that's the change. And same thing with Sonia Rahman coming into a situation where apparently, not even allegedly, according to Hoveta's reporting, the president has not had a conversation with the new head coach about the direction. For me, just knowing what I know, that's a little bit of a flag. Maybe not a full-on red flag, but it might be a yellow card. Like, what are we doing? Caution. Caution.
And I have reported previously, and I talked to a few sources that there was some mistrust on the player side towards Talisa, especially after that 2020 the free agency that Stewie left, because the Storm went a whole week basically without making a single move, and all they had were 4 players in the roster, and they were one of those players was Mercedes Russell. And they didn't make any moves. So there was some like, okay, what's happening here? That's when they went and elevated Pokey Chapman to try to get some guidance, and that's when NECA and Skylar came in. So there seems to be they seem to be prioritizing like pleasantries and not making anyone uncomfortable. But like Brian said, that's not how things move in this industry, in this market. You can't, like, what is the future going to look like for the Storm if they keep playing, if they keep doing women's basketball like we were doing women's basketball when they won their first championship, even 2020, when things were so different for women's sports.
Yeah.
The world of sports and women's sports has evolved in a way that there's no room for passiveness, that there's no room for comfort. Honestly, I think it's
100%.
disrespectful to players to prioritize comfort instead of being aggressive. Players want to
Instead of
win.
winning. Winning is the goal.
Exactly. Players
That's
don't
the
want
name of the
to.
game.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. How long is it? How long until players speak up on the situation with the Seattle Storm and the Storm does not become a destination anymore? Because, like it
I
or
mean, then
not, even
they took
Chicago
a
is
big
having a
hit.
practice facility.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, they took a big hit with what happened with Jewel Lloyd. I think that was kind of litigated in public in a very weird way. We tried to stay as neutral as possible because there
Mhm.
was a lot that was said about Jewel Lloyd. I think, and we even saw this in Vegas, right? There is a critique that was fair regarding performance for Jewel Lloyd, and even maybe leadership comparative to what was needed in Seattle, in fairness. Not necessarily her leadership carte blanche, right? Overall, like innately, but what was needed in Seattle versus what Jewel Lloyd could provide. We've talked about that.
Mhm.
But what wasn't cool was, and I don't want to. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this was instigated by the Seattle Storm organization. I do think, though, that there was a little bit of a lack of grace for an off season, especially an off season for a player that seemed to be now on the other side expressing discontent with the situation. I'll leave it there. But there has to be something has got to give, and the Seattle Storm organization has to decide how they want to move forward. And it's interesting because some of this it has me thinking of what we're gonna have to say for another episode, but there's a transition happening in the coaching pipeline where WNBA coaches overwhelmingly are coming from NBA experience. Now that has come at the cost, at least from the demographics that we have and the coaches that we will see in the next season. It's coming at a cost of Black women having head coaching roles. Noelle Quinn was the last Black woman to have a head coaching role. There will be none in the next WNBA season. There will be 2 Black coaches, but they will both be men. And both are in effectively their first, with Tyler Marsh now, 2-3 seasons, because we have, Washington again, they looking good. So we got Washington and Chicago, diametrically opposed as far as the pendulum when it comes to viability as far as a franchise. But Seattle, to me, seems to be on the wrong side of the trend when it comes to what that looks like in the front office. But in fairness, that's not only a Seattle issue, because we're seeing that as the trend for head coaching is changing, and perhaps there's this equating NBA experience to the better, more viable option. We have not seen that trickle up. Usually we talk about trickling down, but when is the WNBA going to impart that same trend perhaps to front office? Because some front offices in this league have been around and have been making at best questionable decisions for quite some time. We already talked about Chicago. If I'm being honest, Dallas is on that list too, because they've been in a position to have number 1 picks before. And we've seen 3 consecutive number 1 picks have led to 3 championships for the Vegas Aces. Just the one number one pick for New York, and they've been able to get to a championship. So what's holding Dallas back? Why can't Chicago get it together? These are things that as the league continues to grow and show viability, that we have to ask these questions. Now, the big question right now in the media is about head coaching, but I think we have to kick it up. And in some ways, Seattle is not the most egregious example, but they're at a tipping point. They can really make a difference if they critically look at where the organization is. And until they do that, they're not really going to be a contender. And that's just the truth. That's the truth of the matter. It goes back to something that was uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of New York Liberty fans to see Sandy Brondello out the door. Whether that was the right decision or not, we'll find out. But what I can respect about Jonathan Kolb is at least that he owned the decision, including that it was a hard decision to make, because he's thinking and reacting, not just reacting, but following and wanting to be ahead of the trends. There are not a lot of WNBA franchises, in my opinion, that are doing that when it comes to the front office. Even though there's proof year after year after year that perhaps it's not the coaches, it's not the players, but it's the front office that's the problem. I don't think Seattle is in dire straits when it comes to that. Again, there are much more egregious examples, Dallas, Chicago. But if they don't get this right, they might find themselves on the wrong side of the trend in the blink of an eye. Yeah. And that would be unfortunate. That would be unfortunate. So, yeah, no one hired Tolliver. No one hired January. Again, we did expect to have that coaching conversation, but there was just so much to talk about with Seattle, rightfully so, that we opted to stay there. But we are going to talk about this coaching carousel, including Damien. I did see your comment. And like I said, yes, we did. Of course, we know that there's a new head coach with the New York Liberty. They rounded out the coaching staffs, or head coaching positions, I should say, for this WNBA season, or looking forward to the next season. So we're going to have to break that down. But we're not going to get into that today. But I do think that this was an important conversation to have about Seattle, because, again, there are a lot of questions. And honestly, it doesn't sound like the organization did a great job at easing some of the trepidation, some of the curiosities, or quite honestly, criticisms that they had ahead of the 2026 season. But for Brian Florentin, who is staying up with us super late, we appreciate you. Yeah, because now we're both on the West Coast, Roberta and Roberta Rodriguez. We're going to wrap it up here, but I want to go around the horn. Brian, you have been more of an observer, because we really leaned into Seattle hardcore here. But let us know what you have coming down the pike and how folks can follow you.
Yes, I am on all social media platforms at BusyXP. Newsletter, got 2 coming for you this week. Got everything lined up. Got this conversation. You got a lot of good stuff coming in. Exciting weekend of basketball coming up. Which I learned about the Players Era tournament in Las Vegas for the next couple of days. So a lot of good college ball to watch and keep up with. I'm excited. Got a lot of things coming up. When the Liberty have their presser for Chris DeMarco, we'll see how it looks there. Got you covered there. So got a lot of good coming. We'll be almost at the end of the finishing line, guys. The year is almost out, but we got a lot of good stuff.
I know. That's wild. It's so wild, right? Less than 50 days until the end of the year, which is insane. Thank you, Brian, as always. And next time we come on Black Rosy Media to talk about women's basketball, we will definitely center the conversation to the New York Liberty. But Roberta, of course, you are more than welcome to join us for that combo as well. But similarly to what Brian did, let us know where folks can find you.
Yeah, so I'm on social media on X. It's Roberta WBB, as in women's basketball. I have been focusing my writing on Forbes, so you can find me Forbes. Just Google Forbes, Roberta F. Rodriguez, and you'll find my stuff there. I did while we talked here. I love that we talked about the draft lottery teams, because I did write like a brief analysis on the state and the needs of each of those teams. So yeah, I've been focusing my work on Forbes and Black Rosie Media for the podcasting. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
I love it. And I am Erica El Ayala, your founder of Black Rosie Media, also a co-host, of course, of Tempestaji Talk, which you've been listening to, and Gotta Get Up, a podcast for New York Liberty fans. We have our new endeavor, the 206 Sports Collective, which Tempestaji Talk, of course, will be a part of, being in Seattle and covering the Seattle Storm. But we've got you covered for Seattle Kraken and Seattle Torrent. Again, Allison Lucan, the writer and broadcaster for the Seattle Kraken, will join us on our our upcoming episode of 206 Sports Collective, with some great advice also for those looking for a career change or wanting to cut their teeth in sports media. So you're not going to want to miss that. And for CBS Sports, I will be diving into what will be part of our conversation on our next podcast, which is, where are all the Black women head coaches and why does the WNBA have none? Is this a concern? How much should we read into the trend of WNBA assistants coming to, NBA assistants coming to the WNBA? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So I'll break down some of that in nuance that's coming over for CBS Sports. But for Roberta and for Brian, thank y'all so much for joining us. And I'm actually going to incorporate something I usually do on my hockey podcasts. But just a reminder, be kind to yourselves. The world can be a fast and furious place, but it's important for you to remain kind, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and extend that grace and kindness to others. And, we're going to keep doing what we do here in the off season. But thank you all so much for joining us. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.